I will finish our series on Philippians today. So next week, we're going to go to Colossians. After Colossians, we're going to go to John. It'll be quite a while. It'll be long. Okay, maybe around a year to finish the book of John. But I would advise you start reading this week 1 or 2 times the book of Colossians. Okay? Did you guys read the book of Philippians? Okay. Very good. Well, if we look at the teachings of Paul, the sacrifices he made, the struggles, the demands he put on the believers, more than any apostles, Jesus put a lot of demands on the believers. I know it's not popular among Christian teachings nowadays, but there's a lot of demands that Jesus gave on the believers. Remember last week when we talked about the emptying of Christ? When the way I will summarize it is this. Paul said in Philippians, let this mind be in you. Let this attitude be in you as it is in Christ Jesus. Okay? Maybe in the future I'll be able to explain this more, but let me just put it in summary, okay? Even as Jesus became man, became like us, he wants us to be like him. That's the summary. Okay? If Jesus became like us, then he wants us to become like him. That is a summary of the humility of Christ. That's why the demand is high. Now, the power is available because by his grace. That's why when we go to John, especially when we begin to talk about Jesus saying, he had seen me, had seen the Father. And sometimes we wonder, how are we going to do the work of God? Because Jesus said, I only do what I see my Father is doing. So people wonder, how are you going to see the Father? Well, you see Jesus. Look at Jesus, what he's doing. What Jesus is doing is what the Father is doing, and we can copy. Okay? So that is essentially Jesus coming down to give us a lift. That's a summary of the emptying of Jesus Christ. Now, Jesus put demands, empowered by his Spirit, empowered by his Word, empowered by his grace. Now, Paul echoed the same demands. We don't hear the same echo coming from the other apostles. The other apostles wrote a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but not as extensive as Paul. Because I think Paul ended up having a lot more understanding on what the gospel is. So when you begin to look at his struggles, the imprisonments, the beatings, the sacrifices, he even refused to get married. He said, I have the right, like the other apostles, to bring a wife. But he refused. Why in the world is Paul like that, so dedicated? Because of what I just simply call the cause. I introduced that last Friday. And in Christianity, I don't know when it started because it wasn't like this in the first centuries, especially in the second century. It wasn't like that, most especially in the first century. Somehow we lost it. So we think that being a Christian, being part of the church, is coming to church on Sunday, giving a little bit of tip to the Lord and being prayed for. It's all about us. It's all about what I can get. If you have needs, come to the church. It's about us. My contractor was having difficulty with his love life. Another contractor that was working for me said to him, solution, church. Go to the church. So you have a need, go to the church. That is not a bad teaching at all, because Jesus is here. But it becomes the motivation why people come to church. We come to get. We come to take something. When Jesus had already given everything that pertains to life and godliness. So we normally we lost our job, we come to church. We're having marital problems, we come to church. We're sick, we come to church. Again, not a altar call, not a bad reason for coming. However, if that is all it is, then we are negating the message of the gospel, which is, unless you are willing to forsake all, give all, sacrifice all, you're not worthy of me. Christianity is about Jesus giving all to us. That's the one side of the coin. The flip side of the coin is, to complete the coin, we give all to Him. Okay? And the cycle will not be complete unless that is the case. And so when you begin, when Christians begin to treat the church as doing something because it's convenient, or because they benefit from it, all for the taking, then we lose totally the spirit of giving everything, and that is the gospel, okay? And that's why partnership becomes less meaningful, okay? Less meaningful. At one time, years ago, somebody died, not a member of the church. And a member of the church said, oh, the church will host the funeral, we'll do these things. I said, well, it's not even a member of the church. And, the property of the church is for the church members. I mean, if you're not a member of the church, if you come to take, those privileges are not for you. This is for the committed members of the body. And I think they own this building, they own the facilities. And so when I voiced that out, boy, the family was upset. Yeah. Because they come to take. Okay? And that is not, the cause is selfish, the cause is personal. But Paul saw something here. He said, I was a Pharisee, I was advancing the law, I was advancing Jewish tradition, and I gave my life for it. Now I found that is not what I am made for. He found the real purpose, the real reason why he exists. That is the cause. Okay? Now, initially we can say, well, the cause will be to preach the gospel to all nations, to make disciples. That's basically what it boils down to. But that's easy to say. What is needed to accomplish that is much more. In 1982-81, Billy Graham did the first Luzon Congress, Luzon, Switzerland, Luzon Congress in World Evangelism. The second Congress was held in the Philippines, I think 1990 or something, I forgot. But it was held in the Philippines. And in 1981 or 82, when Billy Graham was addressing the Christians, he said, the Christians, the evangelical Christians, earmarked something like, I forgot the figures, okay, so these figures are not accurate, but I'm just giving figures for the sake of giving figures. I think he said the evangelicals, the Christians around the world, earmarked, say, $250 million to evangelize the world. But that is not the figure, I'm just giving a figure. And he said the Catholic Church earmarked more than that, something like $350 million to spread Roman Catholicism all over the world. And he said, the Islamic faith earmarked unlimited. That's what they said. The Islam says, we will pay everything to evangelize the world with Islam. Now question, who's got more commitment? Exactly. You see, that's the difference. For them, they have a cause. They found a cause. We didn't even find it. So in one of the ministers' conference that me and Brother Willie go every year in Texas, one of the speakers said, the Christians have no rallying point. And so he suggested what will rally, he believed, the people of God together is the nation of Israel. Everybody was excited. But as I followed the news, for goodness sake, it's not a rallying point anymore because the Christians are divided. Some Christians don't support, some Christians even support anti-Semitism. Okay? Look at it. Trump was able to broker a peace agreement between Israel and UAE. Now it was followed by Bahrain. But on top of that, for the first time, Saudi Arabia allowed Israeli commercial airplane flying rights over Saudi Arabia. Now this is big. It's both exciting and concerning. Why? Because the one who will broker the false peace is the Antichrist between Israel and her enemies. That's why I don't believe this will materialize. Okay, because the prophecy about him is in the second term, he'll walk in as a praying man and as a man full of the Spirit. So, having said that, have we committed our lives to something that is worthwhile? I mean, I'm not saying you raise your hand. Anybody can, even a dog can raise its hand. I'm saying, have you committed your life to something? Our founding fathers, during the in a fight or war of independence against Britain, they pledged their wealth, they pledged their honor and their lives to achieve independence. And they did. Do you know that most of the founding fathers went bankrupt because of this? Some of them were executed, lost their lives. They found a cause. And Christianity has a lot more cause than what they have. Remember that movie? I would just assume some of you saw it. The Patriot, Mel Gibson and a lot of other characters. Okay. Remember his son who died and said to his dad, "Dad, don't forget the cause." It's not about remember. Don't forget the cause. It's the cause that made him return to the army, even when he was already very discouraged and won't fight. Remember the cause. So, that question still holds true to us. Now, let me read to you again chapter 3, 7 to 10. For everything that was gained to me, I have considered to be loss because of Christ. So everything because of Christ. More than that, I consider everything to be loss in view of the surpassing value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For him, nothing is greater than knowing Jesus. I don't know if you feel the same way, that knowing Jesus is primary and superior in your life. Because of him, I have suffered the loss of all things and consider them as dung, so that I may gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own from the law, but one that is through faith in Christ, the righteousness from God based on faith. One believer of another faith lost everything, and he wants to preserve the honor of his religion. And so his comrade says, "But sir, to further our cause, you already gave all your wealth." And he looked at them and says, "Yeah, but what is there to life anyway?" He said, I have my gun. And he said, "I have my burial clothes." That's what he said. He said, "We will achieve our purpose. So I have my gun and I have my burial clothes." He was rich. But he said, "I have given everything to this." I read that kind of commitment and I say, the Christians still have that. Because in Paul, for example, when he said, "I consider all things as dung," because why did he say, "I consider all things dung"? Put it in the 21st century. Are you crazy? You're very influential, you're educated, you're rich. You abandon everything? And here you are traveling all across Asia Minor and Israel, and preaching the gospel for what? Your own people rejected you. And Paul, after hearing, you got in jail several times, you got whipped at least 3 times, you died once, shipwrecked and all. And Paul looked at them and said, hey, forget it. That's nothing. I consider that as done for the sake of this. Now that kind of heart, I think, of course we say it's the grace of God, but there is always human participation. He made a commitment and was able to absorb the essence of what faith life is. Okay? Which I think some people will still struggle to get. My goal is to know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, being conformed to his death, assuming that I will somehow reach the resurrection from among the dead. Now look at this in Galatians 4:19. This is one of the goals that Paul had. He said, my children, 4:19 of Galatians, I am again suffering labor pains for you until Christ is formed in you. You see, that is a cause. That Paul said, I want the Christians to grow into Christ-like maturity. If Jesus became like us, then we can become like him. Can you imagine if you make that as one of your goal to be like Christ? If your goal is to be like Christ, how much are you willing to pay for it? If it's a school, you're going to school, how much are you willing to pay for it? The dentist of my kids, another dentist, not a dentist now, he's a Syrian. I think he's a Syrian Christian. So I asked him, how did you get into dentistry? He said, I got rejected in the dental school so many times. I said, really? He said, yeah, I don't have the grades to be admitted right away. I said, really? And I said, what did you do? He said, well, I discovered something. He went to, I think, UIC or someplace here with dental school. He said, what I did was I discovered that the committee that approves the enrollment all volunteers to this clinic. So he said, I volunteered there. And I get to know the committee members. And then after volunteering, spending hours volunteering, one day, one of the doctors, which happens to be the chairman of this admission committee in dental school, was there volunteering, asked me, what are your goals, young man? And he said, I want to become a dentist. And because he was such a good volunteer, the guy says, well, the moment you're ready to apply, use me as a reference. I'm in the admissions committee. That's all he was waiting for. He was admitted. And he said, after I graduate, I owe the government $250,000 to become a dentist. Yeah. He said, that's how much I owe the government. That's why he said I have to keep volunteering because it will offset and they will write off the debt. But I was looking at it, I said, man, you're willing to spend $250,000 to achieve a degree. Doctor in dental science. You're willing to do that. You went through all the volunteer. He was willing to pay for that. And so, now we can ask ourselves the question, how much are we willing, for lack of a better term, to pay to be more like Christ, to achieve that? Because Christianity is not just, raise your hands, you're going to heaven. That is not a guarantee. You need to have faith. You need to give your life to Jesus. You need to have 100% faith on Jesus, then you go to heaven. So some people doesn't understand what they're doing. They raise their hand and live like the devil. So pastor said they raised their hands and they went to the altar. Yeah, they're still going to hell. Because the only sign of a person who got born again, the irrefutable sign of a person who got born again is a changed life. If the life is not changed, the person didn't get born again. Because what are you reborn in? to a worse life, then you did not get reborn. You die again. You see? So, that is relevant, okay? Now, if you look at the Old Testament, we find characters that are believers, they are in heaven, but questionable. Now, when I say questionable, what I mean is they're just like us. Because we find ourselves struggling against sin on a regular basis. But I find these people blessed by God. And so I begin to ask myself the question, aside from the grace of God, why is it that God keeps supporting them? I know they have faith, but why is it that, what have they found, what are they doing that make God so ready to listen to them and to bless them? Let me give you some passages. 1 Samuel chapter 25, starting on verse 39. 1 Samuel 25, 39. So when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Blessed be the Lord who championed my cause against Nabal's insults and restrained his servant from doing evil. The Lord brought Nabal's evil deeds back on his own head." David was ready to kill Nabal. Now, he was not supposed to do that, but he was ready, and he will be right. But the moment he does that, Nabal is on the northern side of Israel. He is in the region of Ephraim. Okay? That's where Shiloh is and all of that place. And so if he kills Nabal, a very wealthy, influential person, in uniting the kingdom, he will have difficulty. His reputation in the south is good, but not on the north. So, if his reputation in the north is tarnished, he will not be able to push his cause. The reason why God called him to become a king. And so he said this, well, God blessed me. He prevented me because I championed my cause. You see, David was pursuing a cause. That's why he always wants the name of the Lord to be elevated. Remember, that's the reason why he fought Goliath. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine who dare to defy the army of the living God? He was very zealous for the name of the Lord. That's why he will do everything to protect the name of God. That's why if he needs to be humiliated, he's humiliated, he's willing to sacrifice everything. He walked away from kingship because of the rebellion of his son. That's because of his name. He realized he did some wrong things as well, and he was just expecting that the mercy of God will be shown. 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 44. When your people go out, this was Solomon's prayer, when your people go out to fight against the enemies, wherever you send them, and pray to the Lord in the direction of the city you have chosen and the temple I have built for your name, may you hear their prayer and petition in heaven and uphold their cause. Again, there is a cause. Psalm 9 verse 3. When my enemies retreat, they stumble and perish before you, for you have upheld my just cause. Solomon was pursuing a cause. David was pursuing a cause. 17:1 of Psalms. O Lord, hear a just cause. Pay attention to my cry. Listen to my prayer from lips free of deceit. You see, his cause is to tell the truth. Isaiah 32 verse 1. Indeed, a king will reign righteously, and rulers will rule justly. Each will be like a shelter from the wind, a refuge from the rain, like flowing streams in a dry land. Now this should be the cause of the head of a nation, okay? Flowing streams in a dry land, and a shade of massive rock in an arid land. Then the eyes of those who see will not be closed, and the ears of those who hear will listen. The reckless mind will gain knowledge, and the stammering tongue will speak clearly and fluently. A fool will no longer be called noble, nor a scoundrel said to be important. But a fool speaks foolishly, and his mind plots iniquity. He lives in a godless way and speaks falsely about the Lord. He leaves the hungry empty and deprives the thirsty of drink. The scoundrel's weapons are destructive. He hatches plots to destroy the needy with lies, even when the poor person says what is right. But a noble person plans noble things. He stands up for noble causes. You see, again, there is a cause. So here you are looking at a national leader, a noble person. What will be a just cause? Well, to make sure that everybody is taken care of, that the people have something to eat, to live by, not to perpetuate lies and all of those things, and a just cause, to provide justice for that society. Now, when a person advances that, then God moves behind him or supports him, in other words. So, having said all of those things, let's go back to Paul, to the Philippians, because of the cause that he has. So now let's ask this question, because the main theme of this teaching is more than enough in partnership. Now, I know that a lot of people wants the God who is more than enough without partnership, meaning they just want to confess, God provides for all of my needs, I have everything to overflowing, and they want to testify they have all kinds of goodies in their pantries, okay? And they want to testify they have the best cars and the biggest houses and the best clothes and all of the best in the world. That's what they want to confess. And then they will say, after they confess, that proves that God loves me and that I have faith and I'm living right. Well, that's not the biblical indicators, okay? So now we ask ourselves the question, why were the Philippians supportive of Paul? And they experienced the God who's more than enough. Because I disagree with the idea that you just support everybody. I disagree with that. You know. At a certain age, I don't believe parents should be supporting their kids without question. Yeah. At a certain age. I mean, especially if the person is already mature or old, there comes a point you back off. You know. Because some kids will just waste whatever resources the Lord has given to you. And for example, if you see your kids squandering it in loose living, you know it's wrong. They can't be supported that way. And I'm a firm believer on that one. Now, the same thing with ministries and ministers. We would like to become faith partners with certain people. You don't just support people. You've got to know what you are supporting. And so let's probe into the minds of the Philippians and begin to see why were they very supportive of Paul. So the most basic answer that anybody can give to that question of why were the Philippians supportive of Paul, some of these are romantic answers. Paul loves them, they love Paul, they have faith, God leads them, or God told them so. These are the common. Where are you supporting this ministry? Well, God told me. Well, that's a general answer that can make you sound spiritual, you know. But I think it's beyond that. Why? Because all of us can have all of the above, and yet not be as supportive as the Philippians. You know, you can. I'm telling you, it went down now on the bell curve. The support level in churches, the tithing, not just the tithing, really supportive in the church. Before, in the 80s, it was 20, 60, 20. 20% supports everything that the church is for. 60% they don't know. 20%, the last 20%, they're just dead weight. Okay? Now it went down. Only less than 20% of churchgoers supports what the church is for. Less than 20% now. So the bell curve, the curve went topsy-turvy. Okay? So but some of this church, let's take, for example, the church of John MacArthur. The guy is obviously loving. The guy is obviously smart, very educated, variety of ministries. How come less than 20% of his church supports what the church is doing? You see? So you can have all of those romantic answers and not be supportive. You know, like you can tell somebody, I love you, and then starve them to death. I love you doesn't mean anything now because you're starving them to death. You see? You're not doing your best for your family. So you can say, I love you, but I love you has to be translated into actions. You can tell somebody, I believe in you, it has to be translated into actions. When people say, I believe in you, I'll pray for you. No, you will need more than prayer. Because you don't go to the school and say, how much is my tuition? And you tell the school, I'll pray for that. They will not accept you. So there is always a tangible expression of faith, hope, and love. Paul is clearly representing to them, when they supported Paul, Paul is clearly representing to them a cause that they believe is from God. The other Macedonian churches did not see it, so they did not support Paul. The most supportive church in the ministry of Paul is the Philippian church, not the Ephesians, not the Colossians, not the other churches, especially not the Galatians. But the Philippians were very supportive. They saw Paul's unwavering commitment to the cause or the purpose that he confessed he is leading them to. After seeing this, they keep their commitment. Now, some of you perhaps have experienced this. Somebody told you, we're going to do this. And then you say, what happened? Well, we're short of money. We're not going to do it anymore. Well, but that is the cause. I remember several years, over a decade ago, there's a group of Filipino leaders, quote unquote. They were not real leaders, they just thought they're leaders. Sold an idea to us that resonates in my spirit. Because I really like that. It's called FIRE. If they're listening, I hope they are. They should be ashamed. It's Filipinos in Revival Forever. Okay? They came to our church and sold me the idea, sold our leaders, we're going to do this, Filipinos in Revival Forever. And then they walk away from it. So I told Pastor Gina, what happened to it? He said, I don't know. I said, I supported the idea. I welcomed them in the church. And then they just drop it. Those are the people that you don't support, because they really don't have a cause. Okay? It's fake. Because when you say, this is my purpose, and then you can walk away from that, you're lying. You never heard from God. Because the voice of God is something that should how does Jeremiah express it? It's like fire in my bones. That's the word of the Lord. And I think there are too many leaders, too many so-called leaders who are selling this idea of different kinds of causes, and then they will walk away from it. You know, oh, I believe that is the building that God wants us to have. So they raise money for it, and then at the end, whoop, it's no longer available. So that's why when people ask me, Pastor said, did God tell you this is the building? I said, no, God never told me this is our building. I just like this building. My wife can tell you, when I first came to Chicago, I'll be driving along Nagel, and I'll see this building. And I'll always tell her, that is a nice church location. And I told her, if ever I'm going to pastor in Chicago, I'm going to get that building, simply because of the location. Not knowing that over 10 years later, I'll buy the building. You see? Why do I like La Crosse? Because it's a beautiful property. Did God tell me to buy that? No. You see? Because the moment you claim God tells you to buy something or get something, you better get it. Because if you don't get it, you lied. You know? So people ask me, did God, Pastor say, what about in the Philippines? Do you have a leading on that building? No, I don't. I'm looking for a building that we can use for our cause. Now, is it possible for God to tell me to do something or buy something? Yes, but He has not done it yet. Remember Bishop Winston of Living Word? That property that they have, that mall? God told him that. And of course, he was rejected. And then one day, God just told him, they're having a meeting, walk in and tell them, you're buying the building. So he walked in. It turned out they are in a certain kind of crisis, and they could not sell the property, and they are going to sell it to him. So he walked in without invitation, but God told him, walked in and said, I'm buying the property. And that's how he got the property. Because God told him that. I see. Did God ever tell me something like that? No. And so we're going to look for a nice property that we can possibly move to, God willing, and buy the thing. Because when you begin to say, God told me something, you better make sure God told you. Because if it doesn't happen, then you lied. You become a false prophet. Okay? Anne was asking me when I was dating her, what did God tell you? I said, nothing. I just like you. But there's a couple of guys who, one is a pastor, who came to her and said, God told me you will be my wife. Well, maybe the name is Anne, but not that Anne, you know. Because she certainly married me. And this is what I mean. When you say God told you, that's a big thing. You better make sure that you heard from God. Because if you cannot prove it by the result, then you become a false prophet, you know. Let me read to you Philippians 4, starting on verse 10. I rejoice in the Lord greatly because once again you renewed your care for me. I want you to underline the word renewed, okay? You were in fact concerned about me, but lacked the opportunity to show it. Underscore opportunity. Verse 11. I don't say this out of need, for I have learned to be content. Now, Paul has needs, but he said, I don't say this out of need, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I find myself. I know how to make do with little, and I know how to make do with a lot. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of content, whether well-fed or hungry, whether in abundance or in need. Now, I know some faith teachers will deny this passage, but Paul learned how to have a lot and almost nothing. He even experienced hunger. Of course, that's understandable because he was in jail. Do you think the Roman jail will say, time for lunch? Here's the menu. No. For goodness sake, sometimes they forget to feed you for 2 days. Now, if they're in a war, they starve the prisoners, and then for them to save money, they just kill the prisoners. So starving, being hungry when you're in jail, is common. And some people say, well, Paul always has food. No, he doesn't always have food. Otherwise, he'll be lying here. Okay? And sometimes he has a lot, and sometimes he has almost nothing. But he said this, in any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being content, whether well-fed or hungry, whether in abundance or in need. I am able to do all things. Now, this is the context, okay? It's not about scoring some points on a basketball game, okay? In that context, I am able to do all things through Him who strengthens me. Still, you did well by partnering with me in my hardship. You see, I can do all things is because of a cause that God gave to Paul. When God gives you a calling, He'll support you. Then you can do all things because you know your purpose. It's not because you want to score the highest score in a basketball game ever. That's not it. I'm telling you, a lot of verses today are being merchandised and being used out of context. And so we are losing the meaning of what these truths and blessings are. Okay? Notice in verse 10, the word renewed. Say renewed. So now, that's a rich word. The Philippians, therefore, were not just committing. Okay? They were committing after something. I'm committed. About what? I don't know, I'm just committed. I'm going to support you. Why are you supporting me? Doesn't matter, whatever you do, I'm supporting you. No. It's not that. They were not just committed, they were committing after something. What is that something? I believe they were verifying whether Paul is still true to the cause or not. Why is it? Because he lost touch. Now, the moment the Romans arrest you in public, they arrest him, put you in jail. Okay? They're not going to send telegrams to everybody and say, "Hey, everybody in Macedonia, we put Paul in the Roman jail in Philippi. If you want to visit him, these are the visiting hours." They don't do that. The moment they arrest you, it's the people who loves you. It's their responsibility to find you. If nobody looks for you, they'll just kill you sometimes. Okay? So now, they were supporting Paul. What happened to Paul? He got arrested. He went to jail. Where was he? They don't know. Where are we going to send the money? How are we going to send the money? Now, they found out he was in jail. Are we going to send the money? Are we going to send support? Well, who will receive it? He's in jail. If he is in jail, and we see, who will take the money that we sacrifice? Maybe the jailers. We're going to waste our money. Okay, hold it. Let's not send support. We love Paul. We don't know if he's alive. We don't know what's happening. Let's verify. How do they verify? You already know this. How do they verify? What? They sent Epaphroditus. Now, they sent some money with Epaphroditus and begin to say, if you find him, if truly he is in jail and if he's still alive, then support him. So it's not a cash that you are supposed to spend. Make sure it's when we sold the old property, our board committed a certain amount of money for missions. And so we were having a church in Tala, and so I told the pastor, hey, listen, if you do the right thing, do the following things, we have money that we will help to support you with. I said, I want to know everything that's going on. You know. Well, the next thing he did, he turned around, he made improvement on a certain house that is not legal for church gathering in the slums there, and spent money without telling me. And when I went there to visit, he said, here's the bill. I said, bill for what? I said, if you ask me, I would not allow you to spend money to improve the person's house. Because I said, if you're going to buy a property, you just improve his house. You're not going to dismantle what you put in there. You just improve his house. I said, you have no approval to improve somebody's house. Oh, but Pastor, but he's volunteering to use that for our church. I said, good, God will bless him. But I am not going to improve his house. He got upset. He said, and the word went around, well, he promised there is money in me. There is, but I'm not stupid. You know, so I told him, I want a feasibility study. I want your plan. I want these things. I would not care. Why? Because I am entrusted with that fund. You don't make blanket giving. You have to know. That's why when they lost touch with Paul and they found out where he was, they have to send Epaphroditus because they don't want to waste the resources. Do you know, for example, that in a foundation, I don't know if the percentage is still true today. That's why these billionaires, sometimes you'll be amazed, oh, they gave $10 million to charity. No, they did not. They are evading taxes. Okay? At the end of the year, before taxation, the tax accountant, they have will say, well, sir, you're so rich, the government will charge you $300 million for taxes. To avoid that, you need to move to the next bracket. To move to the next bracket, you need to donate $50 million. And so we are amazed. Wow, he donated $50 million to avoid $300 million of taxation. He saved $250 million. That's what it is. I think the old law, I don't know if it's still valid, for a foundation to remain a foundation, all you need to do is to give away 5% of the resources of the foundation. 5%. That's why billionaires, what they do is they establish a foundation to shelter their money. They are not really giving. You see, they are not really giving. But when God asks us to give, there has to be a purpose. That's why, for example, you see on television, oh, this is for the veterans and this. I think they are allowed to use something like 60% of what they collect for operational expenses. I don't know the exact percentage, but majority of that doesn't go. That's why when, for example, when we do missions, for example, Pastor Jane Ho sent a certain amount of money to the family of Pastor June Ingera, because Pastor June Ingera went home to be with the Lord, sent a certain amount of money. I took the money. They received exact amount of money. Yeah. How did you send it? We paid for it. So that, because he said, well, I want to give this much money to Pastor Ingera's family, but it needs money to send it. We paid for it. Yeah. We amazed a, how do you call this? MOM, Missions of Mercy, because they need to send boxes of products to the Philippines for missions. I think they have to send something like 5 balikbayan boxes. First time it happened to them. This is a Korean group. Most Filipinos get something from the Koreans. They were shocked because I told them, bring the boxes here. Because my wife, we don't, for example, you guys send balikbayan boxes to the Philippines. We don't just send balikbayan boxes to the Philippines. My wife bargained for the price. If they tell my wife it's $75 per box, we don't agree with that. Why will we pay $75 per box? We're not sending one box. You become good to us, we will send hundreds of them in time. So we negotiate for lower price. Why do we do that? We don't want to waste. So the MOM sent 5 boxes, and they said, how much? I said, nothing. I said, well, it costs money. I said, that's our share. I said, you're helping the Philippines. We will pay for shipping and handling. And they said, this has never happened to us before. They were so blessed. That's 100% truly that went to mission. Okay? Now, why am I saying this? Because you are in whatever wealth or resources God gave you. You have no right to waste it. Okay? You have no right to waste it. Pastor Gino laments this. He said, my problem now is because God prospered Korea. He said, some Korean Christians now believe the moment they give something, that's the end of their obligation. That's why they are wasting tons of. For example, at one time, it became popular for them to donate buses from Korea. We have a lot of Korean buses, Daewoo buses. Remember that? And so it became popular for some churches in Korea to donate buses in the Philippines. You know, that's one of the most foolish decisions any Korean will do. Because it's more expensive to ship them to the Philippines and bring them out of custom than to buy a bus in the Philippines. If they just send the money and buy a bus from the Philippines, it's a lot cheaper. Less paperwork. But why is it? Because it's popular, but very inefficient. You see? There is such a thing as that in terms of doing God's work. So they made the verification. Finally, they sent Epaphroditus. After they found the condition of Paul, he has guards around him. Some of those guards, of course, well, most of those guards were not believers to begin with. For them to allow you, you tell them, I brought some lunch for Paul. I have some extra lunch for you also. And so it facilitates. You know, in the Philippines, we call it pampalangis, di ba? Pampadulas para mabilis pumunta sa jail. So that's part of the budget. But they found it. That's why Epaphroditus ended up working very hard. How can somebody be working very hard when somebody is in jail? Because he became the messenger of Paul. He has to work extra because the Philippians have very limited amount of money. He has to work extra outside to support Paul. He got sick. He was dying. That's because he was representing the church of Philippi. He doesn't want to embarrass the Philippian church, and so he did everything. The Philippians heard it, and they were discouraged. Oh, Epaphroditus is dying. We want to see him. That's why Paul sent him home. You see? That is what's happening with this kind of partnership. After they found out what's happening to Paul, then they renewed their commitment. You see? Then they renewed their commitment. You are not just supposed to make the commitment. You have to find out what is going on. And it has to be renewed. Now, when they were verifying, it's not because they don't want to support Paul. They just want to make sure that everything is okay. Why? Because when you give, you are not just giving. You are giving of yourself. Okay? Somebody asked one of the management books years ago that I read, what is time? Okay, what is time? This is a book on time management. Who the author was, I forgot. Okay? What is time? And the way he defined time is very interesting. He said, time is life. And he was asked, why do you say time is life? Because you went to a company and you say, I want to work. I don't know how much is the income right now, say for $15 per hour. When you tell a company, I'm going to work for you $15 an hour, that means for 8 hours a day. That means for 8 hours a day, I belong to you. You own that part of my life. Because in exchange, that's why, for example, if you work for a company, and one that they are always attacking are the government workers, and you're supposed to work 9 to 5 or something, and you go there at 9, in the first hour you drink coffee, you are stealing. Because when you applied for a job, you are saying, this number of hours per day belongs to you. I am selling them to you in exchange for. Okay? That's why when you are giving, that is a representative of your life. You are not just giving something, you are. That's why the tribe of Levi is a representative of all the firstborn in Israel. In lieu of the firstborns, I am taking for myself the whole tribe of Levi. Levi is not just Levi. Levi represents all of the firstborns in the 12 tribes of Israel. You see? And so, when knowing that, then, can you imagine you're a mom. You're working 2 jobs. You're sleeping sometimes 2 to 4 hours a night. You're very tired to support your kids. And then your kids take your money and buy drugs. They are wasting your life. Are you following me? They are wasting your life. You're enslaving yourself. Can you imagine this in Hong Kong, for example, some of the stories I told you? Become a helper in the house. The Hong Kong house is very small. Here's one room, a little kitchen. A kitchen in Hong Kong is very small because it's very expensive property. You know? And so a Filipina maid, this the room of the boss, they will just lay a bed outside the room. No covering. A lot of them are being raped. You see? And the boss will pee in the middle of the night. If you're sleeping, do you know what you're doing? The boss will just walk out. That's the kind of... And then they have wives or husbands in the Philippines, they send the money, and they commit adultery. And they are being supported with the life of their spouse. So one of them, on the way back to the Philippines, on the counseling we did there, tried to commit suicide in the bathroom of the airplane. He could not face what was happening to his family in the Philippines, that his wife is cheating on him and all of those things. He said, I sacrificed everything. I'm not able to see my kids as they grow up, only to find out she has another man. He gave his life. Now remember, when you give, that's why when you tithe, that's a representative of your life. Lord, the fact that I'm giving you my tithe, it's a symbol that my life belongs to you. When you give an offering, it's an appreciation gift that you give to God, knowing that all things are provided by God. But that's your life. So you don't listen to me. You don't give it to your son who uses it on drugs. You don't give it to your child who uses it in loose living. Because that was a gift from God. Are you following me? Oh, you are not, okay. When you give, you're not just giving something, you are giving of yourself. Their renewal is also something else. Remember that in the previous passages we read on Philippians, they already did everything that they can do for Paul. Now that they renewed their partnership, the question is, would that be the same? Because, say for example, you're giving $1. Okay, the commitment is already over. Will I renew it? Okay, I'll renew it. I'm just going to give you 50 cents. So when you renew something, either you increase or you decrease. Now remember, the Philippians already gave all to Paul in support, with nobody else supporting. So now the question is, now that they renew their partnership, would it be the same? I guess, as I said, some will no longer do it. However, when the Philippians renew their partnership with Paul, it stays the same. Not a certain amount. What I mean by it stays the same is it is stayed 100%. Why? Because Paul did not veer away from his call. 100%. What Paul said he was doing a year ago is still what he is doing today. And they found out that's the same thing that he planned to do next year. You see? So because Paul is still 100% committed, the Philippians were also 100% committed. I mean, do you like supporting? For example, you hire a worker. I'll hire you as a worker. Boy, she is hardworking. She does everything. You give her increase. You give her position. You promote her. After you promote her, she begins to slack off. What do you think? Did I make a mistake? Yeah, did I make a mistake? But then after you promote her, she begins to show more enthusiasm. She becomes even more productive. Meaning after you give her what you can give, she made even more. What will be your next thought? I will promote her again. And then she did even more. I will promote her again. But then she said, well, I'm done. I'm going to relax now. What are you thinking now? I'm going to fire her. Because the reason why you promoted her to that position is to function this way. If she stops, you regret. You begin to say, I'm going to fire her. You see? It's the same thing here. When we give 100% commitment to the Lord, God is 100% committed to us. As He will keep blessing us. So this renewed care now caused Paul to rejoice greatly in the Lord. Why is it that Paul is rejoicing? Because not all the churches renewed their care for Paul. Why is it that some did not renew their care? Again, that's Macedonia is on top, Greece is on the bottom, Thessalonica is in Greece. So Paul went south in Thessalonica, and the Philippians the Philippians kept supporting him. The other Macedonian churches said, no, no. It's like saying, well, if you go to the Philippines, we'll support you. But if you go to Africa, we will no longer support you. It's the same thing. For as long as Paul was in Macedonia doing his itinerary, they were supporting him. But the moment he went south, he went to Greece, they said, we will not support you anymore. You see? Meaning they have a very limited vision. But then there are other reasons why the Macedonian churches stopped supporting Paul, and why which in spite of the Philippians kept supporting Paul. And this tells you why the Philippine church is very mature. Now, we saw in Galatians how so many so-called brothers were trying to woo the Galatians to abandon Paul. We have a member here before, and she suddenly left. I was wondering why in the world did she leave? She's very nice. Well, I found out there's a Korean church who approached her and say, if you transfer to our church or something like that, we'll make you preach. They bribed her with the possibility of being able to preach should she transfer. What is that? Some people woo her. Therefore, she is no longer supportive of Lion's Heart. What am I saying? The enemies of the gospel will always do something to stop the supporters of the gospel. In today's how do you call this? What is happening today? The giving in churches dropped. The support went up to veterans, and in a lot of instances, to LGBTQ. Meaning even some Christians, or so-called Christians, withdraw their support from their churches and put it on something else. That's what's happening today. Now remember, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So the fact, for example, now a lot of Christians do this. For example, if you're a Christian, you're supporting LGBTQ causes over your church. You start supporting sin over righteousness. But that is where their heart is. You see? And so the Galatians, we know, stopped supporting Paul because the circumcision party, there are at least 4 parties that were trying to pull them away. What this means is the enemy will do his best to take your eyes and heart off of the goal. It's like any other goal. For example, you want to go to school. The enemy will take your eyes off the goal. I told you about one of my students who was a valedictorian in high school, went to college and found city life, and he forgot he went to school to finish a degree. He realized that there are nightclubs during the night, in their province. Makeshift cabaret, di ba? But now he found out there are nightclubs and there are drugs, there are liquors. He went after these things. Those elements was able to woo him from finishing the goal. And he did not finish college. Thank God he got saved and ended up going to our Bible school. But the moment you set your goal on something, the enemy will start the process, especially if it's God's will. You know it's God's will. The enemy will begin the process of trying to pull you away from that. Okay? That's why not everybody who goes to college graduates. And what are the reasons? Extracurricular activities most of the time. We know somebody, it's a very good person, we know him. He's a champion. Champion of what? I don't know. I will not tell you because you may search it and find out. But when he was in his athletic years, he was never defeated. 17 years straight, he was never defeated. You know. Well, he had his daughter went to college, and his daughter found a boyfriend who played with her heart, and she went through some psychological trauma and all of those things until she hated her father. And I saw him in one store, and we were shocked. I just say, "Hi." And he turned around, "Hi, Jose." And he began to spill his guts. I was looking at my wife, what is going on? The guy was heartbroken. And his child could not go back to school for years. And then he told me, "Oh, finally she's back in school." The eyes was taken off of the target. So the moment you know God's will for your life, you have a purpose. We are not ignorant of the schemes of the devil. The enemy will then proceed to take your eyes off of that goal. Yeah. And he has a lot of things at his disposal. Another reason why people don't renew their commitment to Paul is sin. Sin can cause one to change their commitment. For example, in Galatia, again, there is a belief there that because the law is over, and again, you will not find it in the Bible that the law is over, okay? You will not find that. We can do anything. We can live like the pagans and we're going to heaven. That is a big lie, okay? You will never find in the Bible, for example, that the Abrahamic covenant is over. You will never find that. It's still going on. You will never find out that the Ten Commandments is over. I don't know who among the Christians begin teaching that, but you will never find in the scriptures that that is over. But some dare teach it's over. No, it's not over. People were saved by faith back then, as it is now, and as it will be tomorrow. But there's every jot and tittle in the law, according to Jesus, will be fulfilled. So when Christians say that's over, it's not over. Try to see some of the teachings of Morris Sorul on that one, and you will know. So they renewed their commitment. The other thing is this. The Philippians also saw opportunity in verse 10. This means that at one time, the opportunity for them to keep their partnership with Paul is no longer available. Okay? For example, we are partners with a lot of churches in the Philippines. We made certain commitments like medical missions, building libraries. We're teaching Bible school courses. We're holding training seminars for the pastors. All of that. Guess what? Not all of those opportunities are open now. I lack the opportunity. The opportunities that are still open are the following. We still send money support. We still send books. I don't know how many boxes did you send on? 18. We just sent 18 boxes of support for missions to the Philippines. That is still open. Okay, so we still send them. But no missions team last April. No missions team August. I'm hoping that I'll be able to go there this November. But we do not know. Why? That opportunity right now is closed. Not available. Not all opportunities will be open. Now, Paul went to jail. Are they going to send him transportation money to go to Rome? No, he's in jail. That is closed. What is open? What is open is for them to make sure that he doesn't starve. That's only the opportunity. Bottom line, that he doesn't starve and he doesn't get cold. Those are the only two things that they can do. They cannot send him tickets to go to Tarshish. They cannot send him ticket to go to Jerusalem. That's not available. What is available is to make sure that he is properly fed and is properly clothed. That is all, the opportunity. That's why they were saying, how in the world are we going to support Paul? Looking for opportunity. At one time, there was a prophecy made by Agabus, the prophet, that there would be famine. And so Paul collected offerings for the believers in Judea. Okay, that's relief operation. That was open, not now. How can you do relief operation when you are in jail? You know, before I came to the U.S. in 1991, when I was getting my visa. So by accident, or we call it divine appointment, of course, went to the office of the number 2 U.S. guy, number 3 U.S. guy in the Philippines, Dr. Alhed. And he looked at me and says, you know, Reverend, he said, the war in Kuwait, remember that, the operation something in Kuwait, I don't know, the first war, the first Gulf War. I don't know, I think the U.S. government bought something like $2 or $2.5 billion worth of medical supplies. I mean, $2 or $2.5 billion worth of medical supplies. What happened? After one day, it's over. What are you going to do the medical supplies for? So Dr. Alhed looked at me and said, Reverend, if you say yes, and I was saying, if you say yes, he said, I will divert one ship of medicines to the Philippines. He said, I'll give it to you. And I was, whoa. I'm about to leave the Philippines and one ship of medicine. So I look at Dr. Alhed and says, I'm leaving. I said, I cannot manage the one ship of medicine. I can recommend some people. He said, no, I want to work with you. One ship of medicine. I could not take advantage of it because I was leaving. So we established Lionside, right? And we started this thing, missions. I called Alhed. I found him in Pennsylvania or something, like Philadelphia, somewhere in the U.S. But I think it starts with letter P. There are only very few places, so I think Pennsylvania or something like that. So he was very excited. Oh, Reverend, so how are you? I said, well, I end up staying here a little bit longer. He said, good for you. I said, so what's happening? And he told me some of his stories, some of his needs. And he said, what can I do for you? I said, hey, listen, I have resumed missions activities. You mentioned to me before, which I could not accept, that there's a shipload of medicine. Do you still have access to the supplies? I felt bad what he said. He said, oh, Reverend, I'm retired. I said, okay. He said, I have no more access to that. He said, I'm now into building schools. He said, I'm building hospitals and schools in Africa. I have a foundation. If you are into building schools and hospitals, maybe I can consider. I said, no, we're not there yet. Yeah. You see, the opportunities opens up and opportunities closes. Okay, so now, that means when you support, you look for good opportunities. Yeah. What opportunities? Well, what is in your heart? What is it that God wants us to do? Well, of course, I know basically the church should be engaged in feeding the hungry, you know, taking care of the sick, those in jail, all of those things, taking care of the poor. The poor you will always have with you. These are some of the things that we know are staple charitable givings that we can do. These are open opportunities. But there are some opportunities that may be open. Therefore, you just don't give. Hey, support me. For what? Well, I don't know. I'm still praying. But you want me to support you? Well, by faith, let's just believe God that I will know what. No. if you're going to support somebody or you're going to support a group, you better know what the cause is. This tells me that the Philippians don't want their resources to go to waste. They want to make sure that it is put in proper use. Look, if they don't go to waste, they are put in proper use. By the way, before we, in our last mission, so an opportunity showed up. We visited a jailhouse, right? A jailhouse in where's that? Oh, Trinidad, yeah. I was thinking, yeah, Trinidad. So we went to a jailhouse in Trinidad, and supposedly a lot of the inmates there got evangelized. But you can tell there's I don't know why they do this, but when you enter, there is like a bulletin board, and it has the name of the inmates and what they are guilty of. So you will find what they are guilty of, rape and murder. I was looking at them. You know, all of those things. And you can, and even the jail is makeshift, something like that. But they got born again, some of them. And they're doing a lot of projects. And the church, Pastor Pacoy, right? Pacoy, whom we are partnering with, is ministering there regularly. And churches are ministering. Great opportunity. So when we were leaving the jail, we asked the warden, what can we do for you? Oh, I think they have a celebration. And they're saying, you know, for the party of the inmates. You know, you can buy vegetables and fish. Oh, they like meat. When I say meat, they want pork. Okay, lechon, di ba? So I did not make commitment. Okay, we'll do what we can do. But we left. But that is an opportunity to feed the inmates with what they like and to enhance the ministry of Pastor Pacoy. So we asked Pastor Pacoy, how much is a pig? And he said, how much? So I gave him the cash. I said, okay, this is for the celebration. I want you to buy a pig. The inmates will cook it themselves and they'll be happy, they'll be celebrating. And he asked me, Pastor Pacoy asked me, so what name will I put this in? I said, what do you mean? Will I put your name in this pig or the church name? I said, no. I said, why will you put my name or the church name? I said, we're not here. I said, you are here. I said, we are partners. Put it in the name of your church. So they know your church. Bless them. Because they're there. Oh, Pastor will say, don't you want your name to be there? For what? What will it accomplish? Hosea, who in the world is that? But if they read, given by the name of the church, then the more this church will have an opportunity. So when they go and visit, they will remember the pig and they'll be nice to them. Right? Right? Opportunity. It was present. We took it. You see, you don't let it go to waste. Now, that's why, listen, this is where I think some people are really very bad at. This is where budgeting is very important. Yeah. Budgeting is for the purpose of you not wasting. Yeah. There has never been a contract in the church that we never bargained for. In fact, that roof there above my office that's always leaking is about to be fixed. A price is set. Ann doesn't want to pay it. I told Ann, pay it. And she said, yeah, but I can lower it. I said, no, pay it. I said, why? Because number one, we had one contractor do it already. Brother Lawrence did it. I don't know, maybe you did it twice, right? We find all the solutions. Mark gave us suggestions. We did it. And now it's back to leaking. I said, that cost is cheap. If you can guarantee it will stop the leak. But what I'm saying there is, you consider all things. You don't just waste. Because remember this. When God, you will waste something. Okay? That's a guarantee. You will waste something. Nobody is 100% perfect in budgeting. You will waste something. But you minimize the waste. Because these are resources that God gave you. One day I don't know who among my kids wants to have a dog. So I told my child, are you going to walk the dog and pick up the droplets? I know why people do that. They walk their dog, they'll pick up, and they can't even clean their bathroom. Right? So my child says, I'll do that. I said, okay, to prove it, first start cleaning our bathroom. If you can't clean the bathroom, why will you pick up after the dog? I think that's logical. Buying the feed for the dog is easy. But can you imagine when you're struggling, you can't even buy health insurance, and you're going to buy health insurance for the thing? You see what I'm saying? You balance these things because these are resources that the Lord made available to you. Now listen. If you are faithful in that which is little, then God will give you more. Because he who is faithful in that which is little will also be faithful in much. Amen. That's why the more you are faithful to God, the more he will give you. And if you are faithful in the more that he gives you, he'll give you more. But if you're not faithful, you're on your own. Okay? Well, we'll continue tonight. Learn something this morning? Let's all stand.